Hello and welcome back. My name is Dr. Christopher Gennari, and this is the Great Big History Podcast. History 101, Episode 09, Babylon, the still point of the turning world. When we left off, we were talking about Mesopotamia and how cities were moving up the two rivers and how different cities were fighting with other cities and how Sargon came along and created an empire. All of that will be overshadowed by what comes after, which is Babylon. Babylon is the first cosmopolitan city in history. It is a trade city. It is a city built on trade, not on farming, not on even conquering its neighbors and absorbing them. This is completely new. It is a trade city. And where Babylon will be built and develop, where the two rivers come closest together, about halfway up the rivers. Now on a map, it will go, oh, well, they go much farther in the north than in the south. But remember, it's halfway up of where people are settled. Remember, there's that huge frontier. And so it's the first cosmopolitan city. Now, what does that mean? Well, if you take cosmopolitan and break it down into its parts, like a good SAT word, you know it's Greek. It has a Greek root. And the pole, P-O-L, is city. Itian, of the. Okay, so it's a city of the what? Well, Cosmo. Well, what does that sound like? Well, should sound like cosmos. Right? The Russian astronauts were called cosmonauts. In fact, they took that name first. Astronauts was just made up. Astro, it's just a made up name. It's a terrible name. The Russians got it first with cosmonaut. It's a good name. One who travels, cosmonaut is one who travels the cosmos. Like, that's an awesome name. And so cosmos means what? It means universe. It means universal. I mean, so who lives in Babylon? Everybody. Everybody lives there. All over the rivers. Everybody is going to live in Babylon. So what does that make it? It makes it huge. It's a universal city. Everyone lives there. So it's huge. The thing about cosmopolitan cities is there's maybe one or two in the entire world at any one time. And they're big cities. We go from Babylon to Alexandria in Egypt to Rome. And then after Rome, we don't have one. Well, we have Constantinople. We have Constantinople. But Constantinople will kind of become a Greek city. It remains pretty much cosmopolitan, but it declines, especially after 1204. And after that, we don't really have one until we get to the 19th century of London and Paris. And today, there's London and New York. There are bigger cities. There are much bigger cities. But if you look at any of the Chinese cities, any of the Japanese cities, Mexico City, 85, 90, 95% of the people who live there are nationals. Whereas in New York, 40% of the people are foreign born. They're not even from other parts of America. They're not from America. Same with London. That's completely different. So you have this massive population, and with it, diversity. Babylon will have 250,000 people in it versus Ur, which had 30,000, versus a typical city, which had 5,000. So if you lived in Ur, you thought you were pretty big, and then you went to Babylon, and here is a place, nearly 10 times bigger. If you came out of a small regular city, Of 5,000, you went, oh, well, this is pretty big. And then you went to Babylon. You saw something you had never seen before. It blew your mind. It was 25 times larger. And so it's just massive, a massive population. Diversity, because all those people live there. So it's all these stories. It's all this knowledge. It's all of these different languages. Education, because people are bringing education from all over. Money. With all those people, you could sell. You have a bigger market. You could sell, and things cost more because it has to be shipped in, right? More military power. Because you have 250,000 people, you can make a bigger army. You have more opportunity. But with all of that, like New York, there's more costs, more competition, and more resource requirements. If you're looking at the video, you can see this tower that goes into the sky. What tower is that? What story is that? It's the Tower of Babel. And that tells you, the Tower of Babel tells you what the ancient Hebrews thought, because Babylon is in many ways like Vegas. When you go to Vegas and you come back from Vegas, people will go, oh my God, what was Vegas like? I've never been. Was it as crazy as people say? You know, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Well, that's Babylon. So people, Hebrews, who lived with Hebrews, and maybe some other Canaanite-speaking people went to Babylon, and they came back, and people said, what was Babylon like? And they had two answers. One was, they build buildings so big, they can knock on God's front door. And people go, oh, wow. And you may go, well, that sounds weird, but look at what we call tall buildings. We call them skyscrapers. Like, we don't call them tall building. We call them scraper of the sky. Well, that tells you right there what kind of building it is. And the second thing is babble, to speak incoherently, to speak in a way that no one understands. Well, yeah, because there's so many different languages. You're coming from a place where everyone spoke Hebrew and going to a place where there are 100 different languages. So nobody can understand anybody. And you can't understand anybody. And there's all of these people from all over the world. Or at least the civilized world, the known world. There's Hittites and Egyptians and Hebrews and all kinds of different Sumerians and Akkadians, Assyrians, people who live in Elam, which will become Iran. Maybe some Indians. Some people from the Indus River Valley, from the Far East. Well, what would have been considered the Far East at the time? So you have all of these people, and everything is expensive in Babylon, just like New York, just like London. And it's a success. Education grows in Babylon because you have all these people spreading knowledge, talking to each other, working things out. You have new inventions. Babylon becomes this engine of education. You get bronze tools. How do you make bronze tools? You take copper and you add tin to it. Well, what do you need? You need copper. You need tin. You need enough of both because it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. And you need people who figured out how to melt them down, how to combine them, how to mix them at what temperatures. All of that takes education, experimentation, time, money. You get the lunar calendar, which is huge because now you could tell some time. The lunar calendar breaks the year up into phases of the moon. The one constant, time needs a constant. The one constant is the moon. Every 29 and something days, it goes through all of its phases. And then it resets. Well, you count that. Now you may go, well, why? Well, because farmers need to know when to plant. They need to know when to harvest. Because if you plant too early and the winter, and you get another snow, like I went to school in northern New York. Every February, it snowed in October. And it snowed from October to April. But in every February, there'd be a day that was 58 degrees. People would be walking in shorts. Girls would be getting tans on the Great Lawn. Everyone acted as if it had been 20, 30 degrees most days. And it was gray. I remember not seeing the sun. It was gray for 27 days. I counted. I started counting because I'm like, I haven't seen the sun. And then one day the sun would come out, the clouds would all go away, and it would be 55, 58 degrees, 61 degrees. And everyone acted like it was June. Well, if you're a farmer, you go, well, I'm going to start farming. This is a perfect day to start farming. And you would get these days, a couple of days in a row, where it's in the 50s, and you say, winter's over. And then, boom, 2 feet of snow, 2 weeks later. Well, what happened to all of your seeds? Everything just died. Everything just froze in the ground. And you're out. You're done. So what the lunar calendar goes is, well, wait. You want to wait another full cycle. That's a false spring. Just wait. Wait another full cycle of this moon. Wait 3 moons from the new year. You'll be good. It won't freeze again. And so you go, okay. So both bronze tools and the lunar calendar allow for better farming, which allows for more efficient farming, which allows for more food, which allows for more sales and savings, which allows for more money, which allows for more education. Babylon also becomes a cultural hub. You have all of this stuff you need to record. Who's buying what? Who's selling what? What's the cost? Who? So you get cuneiform writing. Cuneiform is the oldest written system we know of. And that's records. It starts with kind of businesses needing to know how much stuff. It starts with trade, a contract. Contract law is the oldest of all laws because it says, I will pay you X and you will give me Y. Well, you could do that with a handshake, but what do people do? They lie. They say, oh, well, I don't remember that. Oh, I didn't agree to that. But if it's in writing, then you go, well, you signed it. There's your signature. You're Goth, son of Goth. Yeah, I am. Well, then you owe me 7 goats, man. I paid you your money. You owe me 7 goats. Right? And so cuneiform writing, Cuneiform, allows for the records, but it also allows for the spread of knowledge because now you could leave things to the next generation. And out of this comes Gilgamesh, the oldest universal story, the story everybody knows. Everybody knows Gilgamesh in the ancient world, in Mesopotamia. Everybody. It's going to be like the Greeks' version of Homer. Everybody knew Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey. Everybody will know Gilgamesh. I mean, it's in your Bible. Gilgamesh is in the Hebrew Bible. So what are the 2 themes? The 2 main themes of Gilgamesh are how to be a good king and how do you live forever. Like, why do you have to die? Notice, it's the first oldest story. And it's already asking, why do people die? How do you not die? And what does it take to be a good king? There's also minor themes. The flood. Noah's flood is right there. It's out of Gilgamesh. They copied and pasted it. The role of the gods. Do they like us? Do they not like us? Again, like Noah. Right? Now, Noah is 1,000 years later. You have to understand this. The flood and Noah come from Babylon, come from Mesopotamian culture. The Hebrews are Mesopotamian. They're taking these things and they're making it their own. They're sampling them. For those of you who like your 90s hip-hop, you know what I'm talking about. They're taking somebody else's stuff and remixing it to make it their own. So, the flood and the role of the gods, do they like us? 2, is civilization good for people? Well, there's a character called Enkidu. And he's a noble savage. He is born, he is created by the gods outside of cities. He lives in the wild country. And he doesn't like urban life. It smells, it's gross. He would rather hang out like Tarzan with the beasts out in the jungle. He doesn't want the city. The city isn't natural. There's something wrong with people who live in cities. This is the first freaking story. This is the oldest story written down that we have, and it's already saying, do you really want to live in a city? Maybe being nomadic was better. 3, there's masculine versus feminine. What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? For men do war. Men get in adventures. Men have bromances. Men love other men. Maybe sexually, maybe not. It depends on how you want to read into, and they hugged. You could read homosexuality into it if you want, or you could read bromance into it. Either way, Gilgamesh and Enkidu are the best of friends, and they the main loves in each other's lives. Women, it's and you have to understand this, in the ancient world, the way love was thought of is the way 15-year-olds think of it. Bros before hoes. And it's in Gilgamesh. We're not going to let some woman come between us. We're bros. We're the best of friends. Real love is masculine friendship. So, what role do women have? Women are in, they're not main characters, but they're in Gilgamesh. Well, they've got 3 roles: maiden, mistress, or wife, mother. They're a woman who's a virgin who has not had sex yet. They're a mistress, the woman you are having sex with, or you're the wife, mother, which is a promoted piece of they have achieved their awesomeness. You don't mess with the wife, mother. They're wives. They're moms. So you respect the maiden and try to have sex with them. You're having sex with the mistress, and you do not have sex with the wife, mother. Do you see how that works? It's complicated, but if you're an American and you understand that Western civilization has the Madonna whore complex for women, either they're virginal and they're perfect, or they're sluts, well, it starts here. It starts in Gilgamesh, the oldest story of Western civilization. It's not even Western civilization yet, of civilization. Has this breakdown for women. So, sorry, ladies, this is kind of tough. These stories are going to be kind of tough for a while. They get better with Lysistrata, but they're kind of tough right now. And what did they come up with? All of these themes. What's the answer? Life sucks. People suck. The kings better behave, because Gilgamesh is a crappy king. Gilgamesh is a terrible king. In the first page, the first couple paragraphs, all the people complain. The whole reason Enkidu is made by the gods is to show Gilgamesh how crappy a king he is, because Enkidu is going to show up and be perfect. So, if Gilgamesh is Brad Pitt in Fight Club, Enkidu is Brad Pitt in Legends of the Fall or A River Runs Through It. That Brad Pitt. It's just wow, I should act like you. And Enkidu's yeah, you should act like me, because I'm awesome and made by the gods. And so it's kings better behave, or the gods are going to punish you. The gods are going to do something. Oh, cities suck. Moms are great. And by the way, with the flood, gods might hate you. I mean, the gods send the flood to murder all the people. So, life sucks, people suck, kings better behave, cities suck, moms are great, and the gods might hate you. Do you see how these themes are going to play out even today in the 21st century? What are the disadvantages of living in Babylon? Or of Babylon itself? Well, it is so big. It's like New York, right? New York's a cosmopolitan place, which means its cultural power creates jealousy, envy, fear. See the Hebrews, see the Egyptians, or the Sumerians. They're all going to write about freaking Babylon. The Hebrews, right? The Hebrews' Tower of Babylon story does not end well for the Tower of Babylon. It's and then God smashed it, because nobody should build that big. Losers. See, our God is awesome, and he doesn't take that crap from people who think they're like God. See, in one of the themes of the Hebrew Bible is bad things happen to you when you act like a god. God doesn't like that. And so when the Babylonians build something that reaches up to God's front door, he smashes it, right? But the Egyptians have stories like that too. Oh, these Babylonians think they're so smart, right? It's just like all the people who are upset at Hollywood today or New York today. Oh, they're so sophisticated. They're so smart. They're not real. They're not real Americans, right? Broadway or Hollywood. It's liberal. It's gay. It's Jewish. It's all these other things that become not American for various different peoples. The Sumerians have it even worse because at least Egypt or the Hebrews are pretty far away. Egypt has its own culture. So the Egyptians are a little behind, but they're like, well, we're tough too. We're Egypt, man. We got pyramids, right? The Sumerians have to live with this stuff. They're like the suburbs of Babylon. So every time, like their people, it's like their people are moving to Babylon. Their young women are moving to Babylon to become actresses. It's that kind of like, it's they're constantly being taunted by the sheer nearness and size of Babylon. Kind of like Philly or Boston to New York. So another problem is diversity. Now I know we're in the 21st century. We talk about diversity being awesome, but there's a problem with diversity. What language do you use? Whose religion is right? Whose rules do you use? If you have 50 different ethnicities, 100 different ethnicities, they all think they're right. All of them. So they come to Babylon thinking they're right, which means they think everybody else is wrong. Right? New Yorkers will tell you how you're supposed to walk on a sidewalk. Well, maybe you walk differently on a sidewalk. No, you're wrong. New Yorker will tell you. Right? You're a tourist. And so, who's right? How do you get these people to live together? How do you make different people live together without killing each other? Right? In some places, you have to write out your contract. In other places, a handshake is perfectly fine. Like, if you live in a small town of 500 people, you don't need to write out your contract. First, no one can read or write. But two, you know everybody. You know everybody's kids. You know where everyone lives. If you screw with somebody, you screw somebody out of their goats, everybody will know. But in Babylon, nobody will know. There are no, like, Yelp reviews. Or if there are Yelp reviews, they're the 3 1-stars in the sea of 50 5-stars. Like, they'll never get seen. And so, who's right? So diversity always creates this problem. Diversity is great because it brings in education, it brings in knowledge, it brings in more money, it brings in more ways of doing things. People learn from each other. Right? We get the Noah story from Gilgamesh. Like, the Hebrews made it their own. That's diversity. That's awesome. But how do you keep people from killing each other when they have to live with each other? And that's going to be Babylon. That's going to be Babylon. That's going to be Hammurabi. Hammurabi is going to be the lawgiver. And okay. He's going to be the lawgiver. Now, he's the 6th king of Babylon. So he's inheriting Babylon at like its height. He's not the first king. He comes in with this problem of diversity. Too many people who are all not Babylonian. They're all doing their own things. So what is his answer? He's going to be the first lawgiver. He's going to write out a law code. The king makes the rules. Notice, new legitimacy, right? New form of legitimacy. We went from survival to protector to conqueror to now lawgiver. These are going to be written codes. They're going to be written literally in stone because that's what the Babylonians have, which means they don't change, which is a problem. Why? Because societies do change. Societies do change over time, which means the rules that are at the time, which make sense, in the future don't apply to the society. 2, how are they going to punish people? So it's going to make a rule. Great. What if you break that rule? Well, it's going to equal social rank. There's a formula. Now, if you were to go to Hammurabi and say you have a mathematical formula in your law code, he'd look at you like you're weird. But there is a mathematical formula. It is who you are multiplied by what you did divided by who you did it to. Distilled into one phrase, that is, it's an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. If you're of the same social status. Now, here's the big thing in this test. On your test, I'm going to mark you wrong if you say it's an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, because that is not the Babylonian law code. That's the Hebrew take on it. Why? Because the Hebrews were all equal before their one God. Even though there are social ranks, God didn't, Yahweh, the Jewish God, Yahweh, did not put that into the law codes. So everyone's equal before God. But in Babylon, you're not equal. You are a nobleman, you are a citizen, you are a slave. Noblemen are worth a lot, citizens are worth an ordinary amount, and slaves are, well, slaves. They're property. And so it's an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth if you are of the same social status, which means if a nobleman punches out the tooth of another nobleman, they will have the exact same tooth knocked out. The exact same, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, right? So it's the idea of retributional justice that is the same, if you are the same. Now, what if a nobleman punches out the tooth of a slave? Well, he's not going to lose his tooth. He's a nobleman. A slave is a slave. So what does the nobleman do? He pays money to the slave's owner because the slave is now hurt. The owner cannot sell the slave for the same amount of money. So the nobleman pays some form of restitution. Let's say $100 a tooth, right? Well, what if the nobleman punches out the tooth of a citizen? Well, a citizen is worth more than a slave. So is it going to be $100 a tooth? No. But is the nobleman going to lose a tooth? No. So it's going to be $250 a tooth for the citizen. Now, if a slave punches out the tooth of a nobleman, the slave dies. Why? Because you can't allow a slave to think they could get away with hurting the nobleman, because then you get a slave revolt out of that. If a citizen punches out the tooth of a nobleman, they'll lose all their teeth, or some kind of half their teeth. They'll lose more than one tooth is what they're going to lose. Now you may go, well, that's not equal. Well, guess what? There is no concept of equality. But there is an advantage to this. Everyone has the same rules, and they know what they are. They're written down. So if you're a citizen, you could point to a place that says, you punched out my tooth. You owe me $250. But remember, there is no concept of equality. The word equality doesn't even exist in any Mesopotamian language. It doesn't exist. They didn't think that way. Of course a nobleman was worth more. If you're one of the king's homeboys, of course the law would treat you better. But here's the thing is, the law does give you restitution. The rich do get punished for the first time. See, before this, you had to make the rich pay you. Well, they're not going to do that. You're never going to meet them. You're going to march up. So he punched you in the mouth. He punched out your tooth, right? Or he killed your pig, right? What are you going to do? You're going to march up to his front door and you're going to knock. And who's going to answer the front door? A servant? A bodyguard? You're never going to meet the rich dude in order to get them restitution. Now, for the first time, the rich have to pay something. They have to admit they did something wrong to a poor person. That had never happened before. But it's also, so the rich get punished for the first time, but also it teaches the poor not to mess with the rich. If you mess with the rich, something worse will happen to you. 3, kings now have a new power, and that is lawgiver, and they have the legitimacy to enforce it. And this is a success. Everyone in Mesopotamia uses it. It's in your Old Testament. It's in your Bible. Check out your old Bible. It's all over the place. Everybody will use this. It is considered, until the Roman law courts come around, to be the most efficient form of law. Everybody will use it. It goes everywhere. So, huge success. What about women? Well, women are a legal problem. Why? Because nobody wants to punch out the teeth of women. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to treat women as harshly as men in this law code. They just don't. We don't. In the 21st century, we still treat women less harshly than we treat men. We don't want to do it. No society wants to do it. So what's the solution? Well, a woman can't be equal to a man legally. Can't be, because women do wrong things. And if they do wrong things, then the law should punish them in the same way that it punishes a man, right? An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth if you are of the same social status. But nobody wants to do that. And so the answer becomes, you treat them like children. They are not responsible for their actions. See, we have an entire group of people in society that the law doesn't treat, even though they do bad things. And if you're a parent or a teacher, if you have ever or work in a daycare, look at what 5-year-olds do. 5-year-olds break the law all the time. If you've ever worked in Wawa, who is the number one stealer of candy? It's probably not an adult. It's probably a 6-year-old who barely doesn't even get to the height of the sales. They just walk up, you see their hat with their little, furry ball on there, and you're like, oh, hey, little kid, and he's like, hi, and mom's like, can I get all these drinks? Can I get the sandwiches? And meanwhile, they're putting like Reese's peanut butter cups in their pockets, right? They steal all the time. They hurt each other all the time. They commit assault on the playground all the time, and yet everyone just laughs it off. Ah! Right? He dragged him by his hair. Well, Billy, don't do that. Okay. Like, that's it? That's all we do? Yeah. So Babylon is going to treat women that way. Mesopotamia is going to treat women that way. That women are not responsible for their actions. And in that way, they could avoid punishment. Now, their husbands will get a talking to. What were you doing letting your woman go out like that? Which means men are now responsible for female behavior, especially female wrong behavior, but it is a way for women to avoid punishment. It is a way for society to avoid punishing women. What is the effect of this? Well, women are no longer independent. There is no independence like they were in nomadic societies. They are a ward of their father or their husband. Somebody is now responsible for their behaviors. Somebody is responsible to make sure they don't break the law. Just like with children. They're not responsible. Do women get any protection by the law? Yes. In fact, they get a lot of protection in the law. The first is they're not property. One of those things that came out of the 60s was out of early feminism, second wave feminism, was the idea that women were property of husbands. That women were owned by their husbands. They're not. They aren't. If you're property, you are a slave. These women are not slaves. They are wives, but they're not slaves. Do they have independence? No, but that's a child. I don't own my children, but I'm responsible for them. Right? You don't own your 4-year-old, but you're responsible for them. That's women. Women are not property. And how do I know women are not property? Because they have brothers. Because they have a father. Because I can't sell my wife. I can't even try to do that. Well, what about beating my wife? Oh, I could try to do that. She gets out of line. I have to teach her a lesson so that she knows not to be bad. Right? So I give her a black eye. That's just for the example, not for reality, just so you know. So I give my wife a black eye in ancient Babylon. Well, what is she going to do? Well, she's going to talk to her mom. One day, she's going to see her mom. And her mom's going to go, how'd you get a black eye? Well, I fell down the stairs. And it's Babylon. There are no stairs. You live in a 1-floor place. How'd you get a black eye? And she's going to say, well, my husband hit me. And what is the mom going to say? What did you do to deserve it? And the door, my wife will say, whatever it was, da-da-da-da-da. And if the mom thinks, well, what do you expect? That's what you get. Or the mom will go, well, that's not appropriate. That's way too harsh. That's way too much. What is the mom going to do? The mom's going to say, well, you come and you talk to your father. And then they're going to go in. And the father's going to ask the same question. Well, what did you do? And she's going to say. And the father's going to have a response. Well, what did you expect? Of course. Or, for this story to keep going, well, that's way too harsh. I don't like that at all. So what is the father now going to do? Going to go march to my house and knock on the door and tell me off? No. He's an old man. Nah, that ain't going to happen. What's he going to do? He's going to call his sons, his 3 sons. And they're going to come over. And they're going to explain. This is what your brother-in-law did. And this is why I don't approve of it. And the brothers are going to say, don't worry, sis, we're going to take care of this. If this sounds like the first Godfather movie, it should. And they're going to say, we're going to take care of this. And what do? They come over at 3 a.m. and they knock on the door. And I open the door, I'm like, oh, hey, brothers-in-law. And they're going to say, bro, you got to come drinking with us. You got to come. Can I say no to that? No, I can't say no to my brothers-in-law wanting to take me drinking. No. Nope, I can't say no. So I go, right? And what happens? They buy me drinks. And I drink. And we have a good time. And then it's about time to go home. Oh, look, brothers, I got to go home. It's going to be an early day tomorrow. I got to go. And I'm going to be like, yeah, remember when you gave our sister a black eye? And I'm going to be like, oh, man, but I'm too drunk to defend myself, and there's 3 of them. And they're going to beat the ever-living poop out of me. They're not going to kill me, because if they kill me, now my wife, their sister, is now a widow and gets nothing. Right? She's not taken care of. She now goes back to the father. Like, they're not going to kill me, but they're going to make sure I know not to treat their sister badly again. To control my temper, and if I hit her, to do it for a thing that everybody accepts as a reason you would hit your wife. So that when they go, well, what did you expect, is the proper answer rather than, that's way too far. So, that's a protection for women. So what women are treated really badly? Ones who do not have familial protection. Ones who don't have fathers or brothers to protect them from their husbands. Not that all husbands are bad, but you remember, there's always fear in the system. There's always brothers out there who will beat me to a pulp. Okay, so women are not property. I can't sell my wife. I can't do whatever I want with her. She's not property. She's my ward. I am responsible for her, but I do not own her. Women are not property. Women are not dirt. In none of our societies is that true. If they were property, they would be slaves. And slaves are an entirely different category because slaves are machines. Slaves are property. You treat your iPad, your iPhone, the way ancient people treated slaves. That's how to think about slaves. That's how they thought about them, as a machine. So when your TV doesn't work, what do? You bang on your TV, right? Well, that's what you would do to your slave. Women are not slaves. Wives are not slaves, I should say. So what protection do you get? One, you're not property. If you're a citizen or a noblewoman, and you get the legal protections of being a wife or a mother. You get a say in your marriage. You get virginity. In fact, virginity is huge in the Code of Hammurabi. It is possession of your body. There are lots of laws that protect women and women's virginity because the idea was no men wanted to marry a hoe. Okay, define a hoe. Well, up until the 1960s, there's a definition. And that definition is, and if you watch Bridgerton or Pride and Prejudice, you know what the definition is. The definition is a woman who has had sex outside of marriage even once. That's a hoe. And no one wanted to marry a hoe. No one still. I used to do this in classes. When we had classes, I'd be like, okay, guys, how many of you want to marry a hoe or a slut? How many? And no boy in 10 years of doing that lecture ever said I. None of them. So then I went, define that. And they say, well, a woman who has sex with lots of men. Okay, define lots of men. And all the women would turn to that guy and be like, yes, please, define lots. I'm like, there's your issue. Up until 1960, and the invention of the birth control pill, there was an answer in every society. And that answer was once. One person, one time. So women had control of their body. That's a big deal. Women got a dowry, which was their money. Now, it was paid to the husband from the father. So it was put in the husband's bank account, right? But with the wife's name on it. It was supposed to be her money. She wants to get a new dress, that's her money. And the legal protections for a wife and a mother is limitations on male behavior. My wife has a right to be a mother. And you go, well, what does that mean? It means, one, I have to have sex with my wife. And you say, of course, dude, professor, what are you talking about? And I go, well, think about it. Think about distances. If I want to go to war with the king, right? And he says, the king says, we're going to go to Egypt. Come with me. And I say, okay, but that's going to be 2 years, a year there and a year back. And my wife doesn't have any children. My wife has every reason to say, you can't go. You're not allowed to go. Oh, I want to go up to Assyria, to the frontier to do trade. I can make a lot of money. My wife goes, hey, you stay here. You can't go up there. That's 6 months up there. No. You got to give me a baby. So there's these limitations on male behavior. Like we already did the example of physical violence against a woman, right? But there's also social changes. Like, where can you go to trade? What businesses can you get involved in? Women have a right to demand children. And if you don't do that, if you don't give them children or can get them pregnant, they divorce your ass and marry somebody else. And they're cool with that. They take their dowry and they take their full dowry. Like, so any money that was spent, you got to reimburse. It's your job to get your wife pregnant, to give her children. Now, if she gives you daughters, you can divorce her and get another woman that will give you sons. You have a right. Men have a right to a son, but women have a right to children. All right. So that brings us to Babylonian warfare, our next topic, and the collapse of Babylon between 2000 and 1000 BCE, and that will be in our next lecture. All right. Be safe. Take care. Thank you.